Where will AMD stock be in 2 years? Will it soar to new heights or stumble? Today I'm diving deep into AMD's future, breaking down both the bear case and the bull case to give you a clear picture. I've done the research and I'm sharing it all. Recent developments, tariff implications, strengths, weaknesses, and my price predictions for 2027. Let's go. Now, some of you might think that AMD stands for Advanced Money Destroyer, but I assure you it's actually Advanced Micro Devices. The stock is down 20% year to date. And in the last year, it's down 40%. And that's not even the worst of it. This is the 52-week high of 187. If you go back just a little bit further, 13 months, the stock was $227. And the recent low is $76.48. We were able to snag some shares at $77.77. It's already back to $96. But to do the math on that, some poor soul FOMO chased at $227. A drop from $227 to $76.48, that recent low, they're down 66.3%. If you bought AMD stock 3 years ago today, you're only up 3.42%. But you don't care about where the stock has been. You care about where it's headed. The first thing we need to do is look at tariffs, because tariffs can have a major impact on AMD stock. In fact, 66% of AMD's revenue is international, and 24% of that is in China. I've been following the tariff headlines minute by minute, and it's still hard to keep it all together. So I'm going to break it down for you, a tariff timeline. Now, this is focused on the US and China. Keep in mind, the reciprocal tariffs involve many other countries. Trump pushed that back 90 days for countries to negotiate. But on April 2nd, tariffs raised the duties on all Chinese goods 20% to 54%. Then on Tuesday, Trump announced another 50%, taking the total tariff to 104%. Of course, China retaliated, brought it to 84%. We fought back again with 145% imports from China. And then China fired back again. So 125% tariffs on U.S. goods, up from 84%. And then on Friday, we had some bullish news. A notice issued by U.S. Customs and Border Protection listed more than a dozen product categories that would be exempted from the wave of tariffs that Trump had imposed on April 2nd with China. This included computers, laptops, disk drives, products that are largely not made in the U.S. but in China, smartphones, memory cards, semiconductor devices, solar cells, modems, routers, flat panel displays. These were all included on the exemption list. It was very bullish for tech. This notice specifically mentioned exemptions for these products from tariffs imposed on China on April 2nd, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So of course, over the weekend, everybody was buzzing. It was very bullish on social media. Futures were up 3%. Tech was back. Well, then Trump came out and talked again. But on top of that, China also responded and said for all integrated circuits, whether packaged or unpackaged, the declared country of origin for import customs purchases is the location of the wafer fabrication plant. So firms like Qualcomm, Advanced Micro Devices, AMD, and Nvidia outsource manufacturing to Taiwan Semiconductor are exempted as Chinese regulators classify these chips as originating from Taiwan. Remember, we have two sides of the fence here. We have the imports that come in from China, and we have the exports that go into China. So then Trump came back and said that nobody's getting off the hook, especially not China, which by far treats us the worst. This was Trump on Truth Social. And then we had the U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. He told journalists that Chinese electronics were now exempt from sweeping Liberation Day tariffs initially imposed by Trump, but the goods would still face forthcoming levies that are being prepared. Electronics are exempt from the reciprocal tariffs, but they're included in the semiconductor tariffs, which are coming in probably a month or two. What we got late yesterday was this. The Trump administration initiated trade probes into semiconductors and pharmaceuticals. This is a precursor to imposing tariffs. The U.S. Commerce Department is launching investigations April 1st into the impacts on U.S. national security of imports of semiconductors, semiconductor manufacturing equipment, as well as pharmaceuticals and pharmaceutical ingredients. Now, these probes could play out for months, some say up to 9 months. So they're still unknown here. We don't know what the tariffs are going to be that are going to impact companies like AMD. So of course, tariffs are going to be something that we have to take into consideration when we're making our price projections later in the video. Is AMD stock broken, or is the business broken? Despite strong growth in revenue and net income and a promising position in AI hardware, Lisa Su getting on covers of magazines, the stock is underperformed. It's been a laggard. Advanced money destroyer. Now you saw 69% year-over-year growth in data center revenue. That was just in Q4 of 2024. AMD is also a best-of-breed data center CPU company. It has 34% market share in server CPUs. That was in Q4 of 2024, but AMD is closing that gap rapidly, Intel being the leader currently. I consider AMD best of breed, although it doesn't have the largest market share right now. I believe that it will. You know that Nvidia dominates AI training, especially because of that soup to nuts, that full encompassing solution end to end. And the differentiator there we've talked about many times is going to be their Cuka software. With that said, AMD does have a cost-efficient open source platform that's gaining traction for AI inference. Of course, you know AI inference is the next stage. We've been talking about that phase one infrastructure for years on the channel, with Nvidia being the leader. I believe Nvidia will still play an important role in AI inference, but AMD definitely is going to be a key player. In fact, companies like Meta Platforms are using AMD. And there is AI market traction here, not only with Meta, but also Microsoft and others. The data center business, just like Nvidia, has become the largest segment of revenue for the company. I believe that AMD shows potential in edge computing applications. Qualcomm's another player, but this is important for AI inference in sectors like healthcare, power grid management, and much more, including those AI PCs where you have NPUs, where we're doing a lot of the processing on the hardware versus in the cloud. Now, we don't know about tariffs, but there is potential here. So if we're looking at the bull side, potential tariff resilience, non-Chinese chips, potential exemptions that could limit the trade impact. One thing you have to keep in mind here is that China is trying to basically be self-sufficient and make their own chips. So that is a huge risk for AMD, because I told you earlier the percentage of revenue of China. We're talking about over 24%. And that doesn't even include if chips are coming through, say, Singapore into China. Now, when you look at the fundamentals, the stock is, I believe, undervalued. The forward PE ratio is about a 20x. Price target for most analysts, $150, down 46% from highs. In fact, to give you the exact number, $144.77. You've got 35 analysts, 22 buy, 13 hold, and 0 sell. But this is 51.21% upside, and that's just going to be the median target. Lowest price target is 100, highest price target 225, and remember, this is a 12-month price target. Something that's being slept on by analysts, in my opinion. This strategic acquisition, ZT Systems, they paid $4.9 billion, and this is going to boost AI infrastructure capabilities. I'm going to cover this in detail. So what does ZT Systems do? They design hyperscale server solutions for cloud and AI computing, manufacture compute storage and accelerator equipment, deploys rack scale systems for major cloud providers, optimizes infrastructure performance and cost efficiency. So it serves clients like Amazon Web Services, Microsoft, and more with tailored hardware. Why did AMD buy ZT Systems? It boosts AMD's AI strategy with an end-to-end system expertise. This is very important, especially if they want to compete with companies like Nvidia. Speeds up deployment of AMD's chips, adds 1,000 plus engineers to enhance rack scale design. I'm going to show you a clip here in a second from Lisa Su. I think it'll be really eye-opening. Targets $500 billion AI data center market by 2028. It strengthens competition with Nvidia without manufacturing servers. This is key. The big thing I want to repeat it here, end-to-end AI solutions, this is what it's all about. If you're a shareholder of AMD, you know about Xilinx. And this next clip here from Lisa Su talks about that acquisition, as well as ZT Systems, and really how AMD is trying to build that end-to-end AI solution.
But we also have an incredibly strong balance sheet. And what that's allowed us to do is make very strategic acquisitions. Very, very happy with our Xilinx acquisition. If I think about what that has added to us in terms of customer set, product capability, skills, 5,000 engineers came into AMD. Now with ZT Systems closing today, another, 1,000 extremely skilled engineers coming into AMD, systems capability, the ability to really give us end-to-end AI. But we've also made a number of other acquisitions in networking, in software, bringing in talent. And it's very important for a company of our size to have the ability to, one, grow so quickly organically, but also layer in additional businesses and additional skills as we go forward. And this is all about ensuring that, we are the leader in high performance and adaptive computing going forward. There's so much need for compute, and we want, AMD has the ability to provide compute across all of the different areas. And I like to say in computing, there is no one size fits all. You need great CPUs, great GPUs, great FPGAs, great networking capability, a great ASIC capability, and the ability to mix and match that. And that is our strategy.
So AMD is building an AI powerhouse for the future. and the market's really sleeping on it right now. Let's talk about where AMD stock will be in 2027. I'm going to provide some information how I got to my thesis. I'm going to give you a base case, a bear case, and a bull case. So right now, there is data center momentum in AMD stock, even though the stock price isn't really reflecting that. AMD's EPYC CPUs, I believe, are best of breed and will dominate market share with time. And the GPUs, even though they're not going to take over Nvidia anytime soon, will significantly grow, and there's plenty of market share to gain over the next several years. The AI cycle is not over. Of course, there are uncertainties in the market, and we did have, quite a few of these stocks run up way too hard, way too fast. I believe AMD has been oversold to the downside, especially when it got to $76 a share. AMD's data center segment is projected to grow at 20% compound annual growth rate through 2029. So that's going to be important for our projections. And of course, if that exceeds, well, the stock price can be higher. If it fails to meet that 20%, well, the stock price is going to be lower. But we need to use data for baselines to get to our end projections. The AI accelerator market could reach $500 billion by 2028. Of course, you can find numbers that are higher or lower, but we're going to use $500 billion. AMD's competitive pricing and performance may capture a larger share. We're going to say 10 to 15% by 2027. It could be more, it could be less. Of course, one important segment for AMD is going to be the PCs and gaming, and it's really been an underperformer. It's lagged significantly. Ryzen CPU demand supports client segment growth 58% year over year in Q4 2024, and AI PCs that we mentioned earlier expect to account for about 60% of the market by 2027. AMD will play a critical role, as well as companies like Qualcomm. Intel, of course, is still going to be a player. Valuation upside: a forward PE ratio of 20x. AMD appears undervalued to its peers. Analyst price targets we talked about: $150, $160 over the next 12 months. What are some of the risks to consider? Tariff uncertainty. 24% of 2024 revenue from China. Escalating trade tensions could raise costs or limit market access. This is a significant risk that we don't have the answers to, and we have to include that in the bear case. But because of some recent developments I'm going to share here with Taiwan Semiconductor, there could be exemptions that might mitigate some of this risk. So I'm going to head to our Discord community. We have a channel called AMD DD for due diligence, and everything in this channel is all about AMD. So the next generation EPYC processor, codenamed Venice, brought up by Taiwan Semiconductor advanced 2 nanometer process technology. It marks a major step forward in the execution of AMD data center CPU roadmap, with Venice on track to launch next year. This is going to be huge for AMD. In addition, you got the 5th generation AMD EPYC CPU products, and these are going to be at Taiwan Semiconductor's new fab facility in Arizona, underscoring its commitment to U.S. manufacturing. This could help AMD get a break on the U.S. side, but maybe not on the China side. Of course, competition, Nvidia's dominance in GPUs, macro headwinds, rising interest rates, global slowdown. If you have a global recession, of course, that's going to pressure tech valuations, and stock prices are going to go lower. Now, you just saw AMD stock get down to $76 and change, almost $75 a share. If we go into a global recession, a deeper bear market where, say, the S&P 500 is down 30%, you could easily see this stock down in the 60s. In fact, back in 2022, in that bear market, the low on AMD was $54.57. So what are the analysts' forecasts? Projections for 2027, there's a pretty wide variance. Some sources estimate that AMD stock could be anywhere from $127 to $221 by the end of 2027. Revenue is expected to hit $36 to $45 billion by 2027. Could be a little bit more, could be a little bit less. We have to factor this in when we're doing our projection. So we could see earnings growth of up to 45% annually, supporting higher valuations if multiples remain favorable. A conservative estimate factoring a 10x forward sales multiple, which is near its 5-year average, suggests a market cap of $360 to $450 billion. That translates into $223 to $279 per share. Right now, the market cap is $154.28 billion. Let's assume that AMD sustains a double-digit revenue growth, 15 to 20% compound annual growth rate, and trades at a forward PE ratio of 25 to 30x. That's slightly above current levels, but below Nvidia's. A plausible range for April of 2027 is $140 to $200 per share. This accounts for tariff risks and competition, but reflects AMD's strong AI and data center positioning. This is not the final thesis, so do stay tuned for my numbers. If AI adoption accelerates or AMD exceeds market expectations, $220 plus is possible. On the flip side, severe trade disruptions, a tech downturn, a long-standing bear market could limit gains to $100 to $120, and it's $95 a share right now. The moment you've been waiting for, my 2-year price target. I'm going to say that in 2027, so by the end of 2027, which gives you a few more months because we're talking about April right now, it's hard to predict the gyrations of the market, and oftentimes you have sell-offs. If you have a Santa Claus rally that goes into early the next year, you can have a sell-off in the springtime, sell in May and go away. So I'm going to say by the end of 2027, so sometime in the year of 2027, you're going to see these price targets. My base case for AMD stock in 2027 is $175 per share. Now, before I go on with my bear case and my bull case, if you're new here, please subscribe to the channel, click that bell for notifications. And if this video is helpful, it took me a lot of time to put this together, please return the favor, drop me a like, drop me a comment, and share the video with a friend. My bear case, if things go really bad, I still see this stock being $140 a share. It's $95 a share right now. So I still see about a 45 to 50% upside from today's prices. I'm not saying that the stock can't go lower in the short term, but in 2027, the worst I see the stock is 140. If I get an extreme bear case, maybe 125. And the bull case, and this is what I think is going to happen with the stock, assuming that the AI trade stays alive, assuming that we don't go into a deep recession and bear market, the bull case is $225 a share, and I could see it being even higher, maybe even $250 a share. You have to remember that we got to 227 for the all-time high, so you're going to get extreme resistance around that level. So I can definitely see AMD stock being $225 in the year 2027. Dollar cost average into AMD stock. Accumulate as many shares as you can. The lower, the better. Thanks for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.